I'd like to call the September 30th Anchorage Municipal Assembly meeting to order, please. Would you please take your seats? Thank you. In your packet. And Madam Clerk, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Here.
Ms. Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Birch. Mr. Clayman is excused. Dr. Selcraig.
Here.
Ms. Drummond.
Present.
Ms. Osiander. Mr. Flynn.
Present.
Ms. Johnston. Mr. Coffey.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Item 4 on our agenda is minutes of previous meetings. Are there any corrections or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Do I hear a motion to approve? Into your mic. Could you speak into your mic? Thank you. Are there any corrections or additions to the July 15th minutes? Hearing no corrections or additions, is there any objections to approval? Hearing no approval, no objections, that matter is passed. I'd like to...
Move to accept the minutes of the regular meeting of August 12th, 2008.
Second.
Are there any corrections or additions?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Mr. Flynn.
Page 16, line 14.
Could you speak into your mic, please?
Page 16, line 14. The second to last word should be package, not packaging.
Second.
Very
Unanimous.
Thank you for that.
Are there any objections to that correction? Hearing no objections, they'll be incorporated into the minutes. And are there any objections to approving the minutes of August 12th as corrected? Hearing no objection, they'll be approved. Thank you. Mr. Abbott, is the mayor going to be with us later this evening?
He should be here shortly, Madam Chairman.
So I guess what we'll do is we'll just proceed and we'll get back to him when he arrives. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Item number 6 is Assembly Chair Report. I think we'll just start with Mr. Starr. Pardon? Committee reports. We'll start with Mr. Starr, and then I'll incorporate mine into that. Any comments, Mr. Starr?
Nothing from the Audit Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Bearapalooza 2008 was a big hit. Thursday night, the Public Safety Committee held a special meeting on the issue of urban bears. We had 45-plus citizens come out on a Thursday evening between 6 and 8 o'clock to testify, to tell us their stories, to tell us their opinions, what they saw as a fitting approach to some of the issues that we have this year with bears in the city. We also heard from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, Alaska Waste, and others. Obviously, there's a great deal more work to do on this issue, and things that the assembly, or that the municipality can do, are fairly limited in scope. We don't handle wildlife management in the city and in the state. That's the job of the state of Alaska. But there are some things we can do, and we heard a lot of good suggestions ranging from more bear-proof garbage containers to proactively closing certain trails before we have a bear incident where we know one might be, to not building trails where we know there may be bears or there may be an incident, to perhaps thinning the population a little. It's hard to tell. We don't know exactly how many bears we have in the city at the moment. I think everyone who attended was very pleased with the process. Typically, our committee meetings happen in the middle of the day down at City Hall or somewhere else where your average citizen really can't take time off work, can't attend. but this was an issue that was going to stir a lot of interest, I felt. So we did an evening meeting, and I think people were really very pleased with that. I think most people were just very pleased that we heard what they had to say. Mr. Starr and I were there, and Ms. Gray Jackson was there for a part of the time, and I really believe that people appreciated having the opportunity to come out and say their piece, whatever that was. The next meeting of the Public Safety Committee will not be dealing with quite so controversial an issue. I hope to hear from the administration on the issue of aggressive domestic animals. And then also, we're going to hear some issues on substance abuse. That will be on October 8th from noon to 1, and that will be in City Hall. Not something I expect a great public turnout for, but as we get deeper into those issues, we may do another evening meeting. So all in all, it was a great success, and I encourage other Assembly members, if you have something that's going to be fairly controversial or you know there's going to be a great deal of public interest in, to consider having your meeting in the evening when people can attend. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Osiander. Yes, please.
I'm hoping that you can send us a written summary of any recommendations that you have from that meeting.
I will do that, and I also have a sign-in sheet that was provided, and we have that distilled, and so I will I'll disseminate that to Assembly members as well, so you can see who among them may be your constituents, maybe not, but they are all people who were concerned enough about the issue to come out and testify.
So you will have some recommendations, though?
I will.
Good, thanks.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. AR 2008-165, as everyone knows, outlines the process and procedure for the ongoing review and oversight of the municipality's budget, and it designated the Budget Finance Committee as the entity to actually review those budgets. What happened in the course of about a month was that the budgets were reviewed, and we limited the budget review just to the approved 2009 budget, because that's what's before us right now. And then at the mayor's invitation, Wanda Phillips, who's the OMB director, and I, we accepted an invitation, and we accepted a challenge that we knew we had before us, and that challenge was that there was $1.3 million increase in fuel costs, and so we knew we had a challenge. But together we worked, and we met with department directors, and we reviewed all the budget requests, including historical analysis of department costs and other business issues. Our cooperative effort resulted in funding a new park ranger program, a superintendent, and 2 park safety rangers without any increase in full-time positions. We also absorbed the $1.3 million fuel increase by analyzing historical appropriations that were underspent, and this resulted in a vacancy factor adjustment which truly reflected the historical ratio. We also saved by reducing amounts in other services which had traditional year-end lapses. Budget requests that were adopted and approved in the 2009 budget last November, we prorated the cost so that we could reflect the program when the program actually began. For example, the new Eagle River Library, instead of funding it as of January 1st, 2009, it's funded when it's actually going to open, which is April 15th. We also achieved these savings without any reductions in service to the public, and we have support from the department directors, believe it or not. As it stands right now, both the administration and the Budget Finance Committee will continue this joint effort to achieve costs and efficiencies, and we're going to work together annually so that we can continue to identify projects, whether it's fuel projects, organizational projects, or the overtime structure, so that we can find ways to save costs to the taxpayers. Our intent to help us do this is to use an authorized position that's in the budget already to work with us to identify projects and to analyze data to find cost savings. And at this point, I really want to thank the administration. I want to personally thank Wanda Phillips for her energy and her leadership, and it's just been a really great experience working with her. In addition to the budget, I just want to also say that I met with the Cooperative Services Authority Board on Friday, and I apologize for the delay in not having a report at this moment, but I will have a report to the Assembly by next week. And at this time, I would like to distribute my formal budget report to the Assembly members, and for the public, there will be extra copies right over there for you to review also. Thank you.
Ms. Osiander, you're on the list to speak. Was that from the last item?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions for Ms. Gray Jackson? I would just like to take an opportunity to say thank you. It's been really a pleasure to be working with you through this budget cycle, and it's been very helpful. Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I would, just a couple of reports. I did attend the Denina Center opening here, I guess a week and a half ago, and it was a very positive event. And then last week, at the invitation of the American Association of Port Authorities, about 700 participants at the Denina Center attended a presentation by author James Bradley on Flags of Our Fathers. That was a very stirring and very well done presentation. As a follow-up to the report by Mr. Gutierrez, I would say that at least in South Anchorage, in my view, you can count me in on the bear thinning side of the equation. I think we need to safeguard our citizens, our neighbors, our friends, and our children, and basically we need to have some assurance that you can recreate in our certainly in the parks that are in the Anchorage Bowl area without threat of bodily harm and damage from the wildlife therein. And I would certainly look forward to the outcome of the public safety meeting and others that are in similarly affected areas to see where we can work with perhaps with the State Fish and Game and others to make those areas safe again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Drummond.
No reports at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander?
Title 21 Committee, Thursday morning, 9:30 to 11:30, Planning Department Conference Room. We will be continuing Chapter 3, starting on page 17 of the public hearing draft.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Coffey?
Working with the administration on getting the Energy Committee scheduling for the generation, transmission, and distribution issue coming in November. Nothing set yet.
Thank you. I'll report on the Community and Economic Development Committee. We've got an active work group addressing issues of energy and what it means to Anchorage, and actually pulling together some recommendations for the Assembly as well as a briefing. And I had an opportunity to meet with them last week. We'll be holding a joint meeting with Mr. Coffey's energy generation meeting in these chambers to hear their comments, and then we'll be holding a work session with the Assembly. We've also begun a new work committee that addresses housing and neighborhoods, and that committee is just beginning to be formed. And basically, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with this, what this is it's pulling together representatives around that are already actively working on these areas, and that there are kind of the renewable resource in Alaska is the meeting, and rather than start all over again, we're pulling together people who've already been engaged in solving problems around these critical community issues and asking them to bring forward information to us and the public, as well as some policy recommendations. Our next item on the agenda is item 8, and that's the addendum. And so I'll take a moment and add these items to our agenda. 9A1, AR 2008-210, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Kathy Feaster for her...
Chairman?
Yes?
Do we need a motion to incorporate first?
Do we do that first?
Move to incorporate.
Thank
So
you.
moved.
All right, so now I'll proceed. Thanks very much. For her 11 years of service to the municipality of Anchorage. 9D9 AM 613-2008, approval of the cost reduction measures related to the revised schematic design for Chester Valley Elementary School renewal. 9D10 AM 617-2008, change order number 7 to purchase order 260422 with SCS Engineering to provide professional services to conduct landfill monitoring and compliance support programs for the municipality of Anchorage. 9D11, AM 623-2008, an amendment to number 2 to lease with TM Investments LLC to provide lease space for Chugach Eagle River Library for the municipality of Anchorage. Real estate services. 9D12, AM 624-2008, amendment number 4 to lease agreement with Hickle Investment Companies for lease space at the Valley River Center for the municipality of Anchorage. 9F8, AO 2008-102, an ordinance of the municipality of Anchorage adopting and improving funds for the 2009 updated general government operating budget for the municipality of Anchorage. And that has an accompanying AM 614-2008. 9F9, AR 2012, a resolution of the municipality approving 2009-2014 municipal utility capital improvements, Office of the Budget, and that has an accompanying AM of 622-2008. 9F10, AO 2008-03, an ordinance adopting and appropriating funds for the municipality's utility and enterprise activities operating budget for the fiscal year of 2009, updating, and the 2009 municipal utilities enterprise activities capital budget, and that has a partner AM with it, and that's AM 619-2008. 9F11, AO 2008-104, an ordinance adopting and approving funds for the 2009 operating and capital budget for the Anchorage Community Development Authority, Office of the Management and Budget, and that has a partner AM with it, AM 602-2008. 9F12, AO 2008-105, an ordinance adopting 2009 general government capital improvement budget, that has a partner amendment, AM with it, and that's AM 621-2008. 9F13, AR 2012-11, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage approving the 2009 through 2014 general government capital improvement program, that has a partner AM with it, 1618-2008. AM 16-2008, the Platting Board appointees of Ellen McKay, Len Story, and Anna Taylor. AM 9F15, AM 16-2008, Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals appointees of Dean Carsey, Tony Vig, and Holly Suzo. And there's no accompanying document with that. Do we have a different one? Oh, thank you. The public hearings for item 8, for item 9F8 through 9F13, are they all scheduled at the same time? Are 10/28/2008. Thank you. I'm sorry, 10/14/2008 and 10/28. What does that mean? Okay, there's 2 hearings. Thank you. This is my second meeting. I'm practicing here. The first public hearing will be 10/14/08, and the second public hearing will be 10/28/08. Thank you. Pardon? Are there any additions to the addendum? Hearing no additions, are there any, I guess I move to approve first. Pardon? And any objection to incorporating? Are there any items that the body would like to pull? Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the regular agenda, item 9, Bravo 1, to declare a potential conflict of interest. And then for the 10-day waiting period on the main agenda, item 9, F4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are appointments for various boards and commissions where a 10-day comment period is allowed. And on the addendum, again, for the 10-day comment period, 9F14 and 9F15.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, for just a minute, one of the questions I asked the clerk was, could we get a system where they would automatically just be scheduled for a public hearing without the necessity of having to pull them every time, because it's an automatic. So we might want to consider that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson? Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Items 9B3 from the regular agenda, Bravo, and 9 Echo 5.
9 Echo. Ms. Osiander?
9 Delta 5, I'm looking for Ms. Handy's side. I think we're still wanting to postpone that indefinitely?
We are not.
Okay, well, I had some confusion on that, so I guess I better pull it.
You
9
do?
Delta
Okay.
5.
9 Delta 5?
Yes.
Anything else, Ms. Osiander?
No.
Ms. Drummond?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. Birch?
Yes, one item for a brief discussion and a commendation, that would be a 9C1.
9C1. Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9A1.
Thank you. And Mr. Starr?
No items.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could withdraw my request to pull 9 Delta 5, I just had my question answered.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda without the items that have been pulled?
And that's putting 9 Delta 5 back in?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Move to approve.
It's been moved and approved. I mean, moved to approve. Is there a second?
No, I have a question.
Okay, could we?
Was 9 Delta D5 pulled by Mr. Flynn, or 9 Bob 5 pulled by Mr. Flynn?
I have 9D5.
I did Delta. He did Bob.
Is it Bob, not Delta? Oh, thanks for that correction. Okay. So let the record show that it's 9B, B as in boy 5. 9B3? Okay, could Mr. Flynn, what specifically, which one do you want pulled?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9 Bravo 3
Okay,
and 9 Echo 5.
and 9 Echo 5. Okay. All right, the chair will now entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agendas without the items that have been pulled.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, if there are no objections, this item, the consent agenda is approved. Okay, so. Okay, let's start. It's not, I want to just, 9A1, and that was pulled by Mr. Gutierrez.
Move to approve.
Second?
Do you have a,
I will be presenting. I'm not
Okay.
sure who's reading.
okay, and is
Myself.
Is
Madam
Mr. Feister, okay, Mr. Flynn is reading, and is there any objection to approval of this item? All those, if they're hearing no objections, this item is approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Kathy Feaster for her 11 years of service to the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Kathy Feaster originally began working for the municipality in March of 1997, and whereas she has served the citizens of the municipality of Anchorage in a number of capacities, including senior public health nurse, family planning clinic program manager, and reproductive health clinic program manager, all at the Department of Health and Human Services. Whereas she has served the citizens of the state of Alaska in a number of capacities since 1977, including prepared childbirth instructor, nurse practitioner, and clinic supervisor for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation, school nurse for the Lower Kuskokwim School District, itinerant nurse and AIDS project nurse for the State of Alaska section of Public Health Nursing. Whereas the multitude of skills and experiences these positions brought her, as well as the dedication and tenacity necessary to succeed in these many roles, made her an asset of the highest order, whereas she has been recognized with many honors over the course of this service, including the Alaska Nurses Association 2003 Excellence in Practice Award, the Alaska Health Education Consortium Barbara Berger Award for Excellence in Health Education, 1992, and the Vivian O. Lee Alaska Nurse Practitioner of the Year Award, 2004. Whereas she has been a tireless advocate for the public health and the citizens of the municipality, especially the most vulnerable, whereas after 11 years of service to the municipality of Anchorage, Kathy Feaster is retiring today, September 30, 2008. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes and honors Kathy Feaster for her 11 years of service to the Anchorage community.
Ms. Feaster, would you like to make a comment?
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say thank you. And I think that those of you here on the Assembly need to know what a great staff you have over at the Health Department. And there's an open house over there on the 17th that you're all invited to, and I highly encourage you to go over there and see the good work that's being done over there. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thanks. Okay. That moves us on to 9B1. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to our ethics code, I'd like to declare a potential conflict and describe the situation, if I might.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Mr. Coffey, could you describe the nature and give us
Yes, the location where Henry's Hawaii, Inc. is a building which I used to own and which I sold about a year and a half ago. I'm not owed any money resulting from the sale of that building, but because of my prior experience with regard to conditional uses and the liquor license located in that facility, the new owners contacted me and sought my advice and consult on what they're trying to do here. I gave them assistance in that regard and charged them a fee for what I did, and therefore, although it doesn't matter to me whether it's approved or not approved, I did provide services to them for a fee. So I should, if
Ms.
I'm
Drummond,
in or out.
Ms. Drummond, will you just read the questions and we'll go over them? And
I will, Madam Chair. The question before the Assembly is, does Assemblymember Coffey have a substantial financial or private interest in the matter before the Assembly? Item 9, Bravo 1, Resolution AR 2008-202, regarding beverage dispensary license for Henry Hawaii.
Mr. Coffey.
Well, the practice in the past is when people such as myself have done work and gotten paid for it, you're disqualified.
Okay.
So
I
can't imagine why you'd change that today just for me.
We like you a lot, but I think as chair, I'll determine that you have a conflict, and thank you very much. Okay, and that moves us to 9B3, Mr. Flynn. Oh, okay. The chair will entertain a motion for approval?
It's already been moved.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any objections to the approval of 9B3?
It's B1.
I'm sorry, 9B1. Hearing no objections, that item is approved. Mr. Flynn, we're now to 9B3.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Drummond, for the first motion. I'll make the second one. In reviewing the 10-year or the update on the 10-year plan to deal with homelessness, one of the recommendations was that the homeless coordinator, homeless advocate within the administration be relatively highly ranked in the administration. And while I appreciate that Ms. DeSanto is part of this effort and is, in fact, in the mayor's office, I just noted after inquiring that this position is a couple layers down in the Department of Neighborhoods, and we might want to at least address that recommendation of the Executive Oversight Board in future discussions of this position. And that's all I had to say on that.
I'll follow up with a comment. I think that anyone that attended that work session on homelessness was actually kind of struck by the number of just children that are homeless. And the school district's homeless coordinator indicated that we've got over 3,000 children in the school district who are homeless, and over 1,000 children sleeping in cars. And the report also indicated that we're experiencing an influx of homeless or potentially homeless people from rural Alaska, as well as people who are coming up from the lower 48 because of issues around financial stress in the lower 48. There's expectations they're going to be able to find jobs here, and they get here, and it's not as easy as they think. So it looks like the issue of homelessness is not going to be getting better, but in fact, we're looking at a more complex situation as time goes by. So I would concur with Mr. Flynn's recommendation of moving that item up on the budget list. And Mr. Mayor, did I see your name or your hand up a moment ago? Did you want to make a comment? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. And what's the will of the body regarding this item? Any objections to approval?
It's accepting.
It is accepted automatically. Thank you. All right. 9C1, Mr. Birch.
Yeah, let's see, I guess it's moved to accept, is that right?
Yes.
No, it's a bid. C1?
It's a recommendation for award. Move to approve?
Thank you.
I basically wanted to commend the purchasing office for this. I note that we had this is a bid for snow hauling services by the municipality of Anchorage at $41 an hour for a 20-yard end dump truck that would, it's about a $1.2 million bid with the potential of going to $3.6 million. I noticed that you had 12, I think it was at least 12 responding bidders with rates with operator that ranged from $41 to almost $90 an hour. And I just am very encouraged by this competitive process. And are these services also available to the school district?
Madam Chair, Mr. Birch, the school district can attach to our contracts, but it does require that the contractor also agree to to pass on those same terms and conditions, but generally they do.
Okay. And I'd asked, thank you, sir, and I'd asked the chair earlier this week to see if we could come up with comparative cost figures for the municipality and the school district for a 20-yard dump truck. $41 an hour as a loaded rate looks competitive to me, and like I say, I'm very, very happy to see the way this rolled out and encourage adoption.
But what do I do with them?
No, the ones that were appointed.
Oh, we'll just do it at the end.
Just thank them.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end. Thank you, Mr. Birch. Is there any objection to approving this item? This item is approved based on lack of objection. And I want to just pause for a moment, and I do want to, we're through our addendum items that we've pulled. Is there anybody in the audience that is here?
We are not through the addenda items.
Oh, okay.
9E5.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not on my list.
And then all the comment period ones.
Okay. And so 9E5?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Just another follow-up on the work session from Friday. There were some recommendations. I was speaking with my colleague, Mrs. Osiander. Have we seen the proposed Title 21 amendments that are recommended by the Executive Oversight Board? The answer is no, we haven't. Have we seen any ideas for implementing the permit waiver reductions for getting more affordable housing? The answer, I think, is no. So just a gentle nudge. I'd like to see some forward progress on that.
We'll make sure those are delivered to you as they're available.
Thank you. Is there any objection to approval of that item? Accepting that item. Thank you. Hearing no objections, that item is accepted. Mr. Coffey, we've got some items that you've pulled.
Yes.
9F, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 14 and 15?
Yes. Mr. Abbott, could you help us get through this process and just explain how you think it ought to be now that it's on the 9F part of the agenda? If I might, Madam Chair, have Mike tell us that.
Madam Chairman, I believe the way the clerk has organized the agenda now, by placing these items under items for introduction, they're going to be automatically show up 2 weeks later under old business. In the past, they used to show up on 9B category, I believe, and they had to be pulled and then set for that at a later date. Now I think the clerk has sort of allowed us to skip the step of pulling them, and they'll just jump directly to old business on your next agenda.
So my question is has the administration contacted individuals that are here tonight, or will they be here in at the next meeting? What's
They'll know that the action on their items will not be until the 14th of October.
So we don't have anybody here this evening to recognize?
Not that I'm aware of,
I
no.
just wanted to verify that. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I suggested to Mr. Abbott when we spoke off the record that we put a notation. Usually if it's a public hearing item under 9F, we would put public hearing and the date. I was recommending to him that we put scheduled for action or something like that and the date so that everyone would understand we're putting it off. It'll be scheduled for action, in this case, October 14th. And then I had one other comment. And this is something I think if you recall the last Planning and Zoning Commission appointment we had, I made a comment relative to what I called private agendas as opposed to application of the existing code and the regulations. And my plan here is to go through these potential appointments with that in mind, and in the next 2 weeks to ask the chair for some time perhaps to vet some of these potential appointees. I just want to let everybody know that. Thank you.
So the chair will entertain a motion to accept these? So we don't have to go through that step. Okay. All right. So I believe, unless somebody can correct me, that we are through our consent agenda and all its partner addendums, and we are now moving to the regular agenda.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make your report now?
If I could do that, Madam Chair,
Sure.
I just have a couple quick items. I know I'll be brief here. One is I'll pass out here. It's the final report on the Denina Civic and Convention Center. As you know, we've tried to keep you up monthly on that. It is open on time within the budget, and again, no property taxpayer money utilized to build that facility. So I want to make sure you get that. Also, you probably read in today's paper a letter that both I signed, as well as the superintendent of schools, regarding the impact we're seeing of some activity within rural Alaska and throughout the state, and we're seeing more and more folks coming into the community that are coming from villages and towns because of economic failure and energy prices and cost of living. The list goes on and on. So we've asked the governor to consider putting together an immediate task force to deal with this issue from across the state, because also Fairbanks is feeling this, Mat-Su is feeling this impact, and it's kind of a two-pronged one to how to deal with the challenges here within our communities, but also how do we and what can we do to ensure sustainability and literally economic survival for some of the communities outside of the urban areas. So that letter we just sent out, and I want to make sure you get a copy of that. And then the last thing, and I know, Madam Vice Chair, I know you were at the event regarding the new rollout of the curbside recycling program. We both had our opportunity to throw something in the trash and put it into the truck, and we both survived, and the equipment is still running. But that's a good thing. But we rolled that out. We expect, I think the number is, and maybe this week, I think it's 3,500 customers will receive the rollout carts as part of the city's new services, and then we'll continue to move forward. And also we're implementing the pay-as-you-throw program, all the things that we all worked on here. And I know, Ms. Johnston, Ms. Selcraig made a note of your work at the press conference, of all the work you did to help refine the final outcome, the final ordinance. And again, thank you for doing that. But just want to let you know it is in motion. The 3 trucks are here, and we expect by next week some of the activity will already start. So I just wanted to give you that. And then one other item, which we announced today. You'll hear more about it, I'm sure, as the news covers it over the next day or so. But regarding the mentoring youth program that the city is partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters, as many other businesses have, AT&T, Carlisle, many others are out there doing this, where they're allowing some time for their employees to become Big Brothers Big Sisters, to spend time in the schools and becoming mentoring. We have instituted a program that if municipal employees would like to become Big Brothers Big Sisters, use an hour of time during the week to go work in a school with their big brother or big sister, or the littles actually, that they can do that, get a half hour of travel time, 1 hour of leave time. They will have to be vetted and secured by Big Brothers Big Sister to make sure there are no issues, and then they will be available. So we are hoping that many of our employees will step to the plate, as many private sector employers have done. Alyeska Pipeline, Carlisle, RIM, Architects, Design, AT&T, just to name a few. And I know several Assembly members were there to kick off the event earlier today. So those are just some quick announcements. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to. I believe that there are no representatives from our appointees in the audience. But if somebody happens to be listening at home, I think I want to let you know that we appreciate your willingness to participate, and we look forward to your appointment at our next meeting. At this time, I believe that we are by law required to step down. Is that correct? Until 6 o'clock, and at that time we can proceed with our agenda, and we will be taking up. Pardon? No, not. It's not until 6 o'clock. So at that time, we'll be taking up parents' requests and moving on with the agenda. So thank you. We'll stand down until 6. This is a lot harder than it looks. There's so many things. Can you figure out why she doesn't delete? Oh, there she goes. We'll begin the next section of our meeting, and which is item 12, and that's appearance requests. I'll get back to. Let's see. Pardon? And I believe we have. Is it Chris? Is Chris Hamry here? And Judy Moreland? Would you please come on down? You each have 3 minutes.
Very good. Thank you. I'll read it and Chris can answer.
Could you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Judy Moreland, and I live at 7300 O'Malley, and have been president of HALO and vice president and past president. And I'd like to present a resolution on behalf of that particular organization. Whereas the Home and Landowners Organization Incorporated, HALO, is an organization formed in 1969 by residents in the South Anchorage Hillside area to represent their best interests in advocating for rural development, safety, and security of its residents. And whereas the southern geographic area of the municipality of Anchorage, known as Southeast Anchorage, is in perpetual danger of fire due to devastation of its forests caused by the spruce bark beetle for more than a decade, and that there are thousands of acres of forest in Southeast Anchorage. And whereas above-ground utility lines are in more danger of destruction in the event of wildfire in the areas in which the lines exist, while underground utilities are not, and whereas the homes of South Anchorage are served by Chugach Electric Association, and whereas Chugach Electric Association is required by the municipality of Anchorage regulation to spend 2% of its annual gross retail revenue to underground a portion of its existing electrical lines annually. And whereas the majority of those homes located in South Anchorage use water produced by wells which are run by electricity, and whereas a power outage in the South Anchorage in conjunction with a wildfire could be devastating to the homes and individuals who might be unable to use well water to douse their homes and property, And whereas it is at the discretion of the Chugach Electric Association, with agreement by the municipality of Anchorage, to decide which of CEA's existing distribution lines are underground. Now, therefore, the homeowners of Southeast Anchorage, through HALO, hereby resolve that the municipality of Anchorage encourage the undergrounding of electric utilities in wooded areas of Southeast Anchorage for increased safety in case of wildfire. Specifically, we request that to the list of factors to be considered when prioritizing undergrounding in Title 2190-060B or A be added the wording whether distribution lines are at risk in the case of wildfire, and to the list of major traffic corridors in Title 2190-090-60B4 be added Abbott Road, O'Malley Road, Huffman Road, DeArmond Road, Rabbit Creek Road, and Hillside Drive. And this is signed by Chris Hamry, our president.
Are there any questions? Mr. Henry, would you like to come forward? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Osiander. Oh, I've got you up here. Okay. Ms. Osiander actually does have a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you contacted CEA Board of Directors to ask what they've done so far about their obligation?
Well, yes, actually, informally, because I have probably appeared at almost every community council meeting for Mid-Hillside, Hillside East, and Upper Hillside, and gone to a lot of other meetings and made specific requests that we consider such a plan. So we've been urging this for some time. To specifically have contacted CEA, that's my next move. I'm going to be calling tomorrow and say, when could I get on your agenda to present this resolution to the board there?
Well, it'd be interesting to see if they have expended the 2%.
It would be, and I wish that I had thought of that in time, Mrs. Osiander.
Well, you're going to go to the meeting there.
Yes,
right?
because it's a very relevant fact, but I feel assured that we are on safe ground by saying we do not think that they have.
Thank you.
Maybe Chris knows more.
I do not.
Ms. Johnson, did you have a question?
Yes, the other, have you talked to Firewise and to see how, if this is something that they be interested in supporting, the Firewise program?
We have not. When we last had the Firewise people out at O'Malley, or this is, let's see, this would be Hillside East and Mid-Hillside Community Council, they seemed to indicate that it was an eventual, but they have nothing to do with really the undergrounding, because it is the purview of the municipal assembly to go through Chugach and to urge that they proceed with this. I would be very interested in that, so I'll follow through on these 2 points.
And I have a question to the administration. Have we ever received a listing as far as whether they are in compliance with this ordinance?
To the Chair, Ms. Johnson. Chugach Electric and ML&P have been in compliance since this ordinance was passed a few years ago. I might add also that Chugach Electric, in fact, just submitted to us their annual implementation plan this year, and it was routed today to the various agencies that are involved in capital projects of the municipality, and we're going to be reviewing it here in the next couple of weeks. And I do note in there that they do include undergrounding the sub-transmission and distribution lines that are along O'Malley Road from the Seward Highway up to Elmore, which is in the area that you're speaking to, along with a number of other undergrounding projects in Anchorage.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Birch, do you want to speak now, or did you want
I simply wanted to thank Judy for coming down. I know this is something we worked on for a long while, and as we discussed during the break, there's been some dramatic increases, or not necessarily dramatic, but there have been some significant and steady increases in the quality of undergrounding cabling and equipment. So I think that some of those costs and those operating and those life cycle costs have really come down. So look forward to taking this, and appreciate you coming down this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I also wanted to thank you for bringing this to the Assembly's attention, and Ms. Osiander is correct. It would be interesting to see those reports, and I just wanted to remind the administration I had made a request to see those reports were supposed to have been submitted not only from Chugach and from ML&P, but from MEA as well as our telephone utilities since 2005. And it would be very interesting to see that. I also had a question to the administration. In some of these areas in the past, we had a cooperative program with Chugach Electric to trim some of the trees, some of the deadfall around their lines, and reduce the fire hazard. Are we still doing that?
I'm not aware that we, the municipality, are doing that, but Chugach Electric still does that, and I believe ML&P as well.
But Chugach had been doing that, and we'd been providing some funds to assist with that.
We, as a part of the Firewise program, we share services with all of the utilities, MEA and Chugach, the two that take greatest advantage of it, so that we do some coordination of tree clearing where it makes sense both from a fire as well as from a utility protection standpoint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's all.
Mr. Nelson, did you have an additional comment?
No, I made it.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. I, as you may know, worked with Jana Schamberg on this with Chugach Electric and ML&P, and my recollection is this, and maybe staff can clarify, but there was a criteria established of what had priorities over, do this versus that first and so on. And is there anything in the ordinance, Mr. Nelson or anyone that, in the administration that knows, that would require an amendment so that this sort of attention can be afforded to the, to protect against the fire dangers that have been identified by HALO?
Through the chair, Mr. Coffey, if we were to take the resolution and put it into effect, it would require an ordinance amendment to 2190. Right now, I mean, I can just quote you right here what it says about the nonconforming overhead lines. It says priorities shall be based on undergrounding in conjunction with the electric utilities' essential system improvements, and then by target areas set forth below. So really, the primary driving force for establishing an undergrounding are the utility companies' system improvements, right, where they feel they're most needed. But they have worked, at least, we've been working with ML&P, and in particular with Chugach Electric, I'd say, has been the most cooperative, in picking the target areas that have been identified and working with municipality. We're working with them right now, for instance, on trying to get the timing and the phasing for Victor Road, because there's a lot of interest in improving Victor Road from Diamond to 100th Avenue, and one of the challenges is the cost associated with that. And we're working with Chugach Electric to see if they can underground their lines at the same time and try to reduce the overall project cost.
Okay. Well, the reason that I ask is that if it's something that, risks home and hearth, then perhaps it ought to be one of the things, because when we were doing it, I don't recall that this being something that we were asked at the time to do as a priority. So I will leave it to those who represent the Hillside area to do that. But I did want to point that out and make a determination as to whether or not an ordinance change would be necessary to change what we're doing. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chris, did you have any further comment? Do you want to introduce yourself for the record, please?
Pardon?
Would you please introduce yourself for the record?
My name is Chris Hamry, and I think Judy's adequately represented the resolution as HALO has put forth. There's really just one additional issue that I'd like to ask the Assembly to possibly flag this Chapter 7 area when Title 21 comes forward. There's a clause in there, B1, that talks about utility distribution lines need not be placed underground in rural areas as defined in the section. These are the rural areas that we think are important, and that's where the fire is particularly important. If the Assembly would just consider that when Title 21 comes before them.
Thank you.
That's really all I had to add.
Thank you. For the record, before we move on to our next item, in consultation with our counsel and also our clerk, we want to put on record that items 9F4, 5, 6, 7, 14, and 15, which have to do with commission appointments, are going to be they're going to be brought up under old business on October 14th for final approval. So I think that was explained by Mr. Abbott at one point in our deliberations, but I wanted to clarify it and have it on the record. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to continuing public hearings. And our first item is 13A, AR 2008-179, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcohol beverage conditional use in the B3 General Business District for a
Waive reading.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open on this item. Anyone wishing to testify, please come down.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
can I do a point of clarification on
Yes.
my intentions later in the evening? We've been trying to accommodate the public input of the community council in the area, so it's going to be my interest to continue the public hearing at the end of this. So I think that if you could advise the public that they have an opportunity to address the issue once, and it may be that, again, with the continuation, they may choose to address it at a later time so they don't avoid that opportunity. But the Community Council, Eagle River Valley Community Council, has got it on the agenda item for October 8th to meet there, and they should be able to provide us input from the local community, which is pretty much our tradition on the October 14th meeting. So what I'm going to do is propose that we continue the public hearing to the 14th after you see if there's an opportunity for others to speak. So,
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Starr. That's noted, and with that in mind, is anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? Hearing no public comment, the chair will introduce a motion to, do you want to, Mr. Starr, do you want to?
And move to continue the public hearing to October 14th.
Second.
Are there any objections to that?
May I quickly ask a question? Do I correctly presume, Mr. Starr, that the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board did extend the application period for a month to allow this?
It was confirmed by the clerk that I don't think there was objection to it. I don't know that there was a time certain on it, but they understood what we were trying to do. So my understanding is we're comfortable with that. The petitioner's not here to object again to it. So I believe we're on track to get that community council input that would be valuable. Thank you,
sir. That's all.
It's been moved and seconded that we extend the public hearing until October 14th on this item. Any objections? Hearing no objections, this item is approved. It's continued. Thank you. We'll move on to B13, Ordinance AO 2008-50, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to provincially adopt a new Chapter 2106 dimensional standards and measurements, amending the Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, subject to the concurrent final passage and approval of all provisional adopted chapters of Title 21. If there's any, is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify in this item? Yes?
Those in the audience, if you're interested in what we're about to discuss, there are copies of the revised Chapter 6 right over by the security guard there on the counter. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further hearing no testimony, what's the wish of the body? I'm going to close the public hearing. Yes, I close the public hearing. And what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve the version of Chapter 6 that's dated S version draft 4, September 30th, 2008.
And yes.
I'm hoping that all assembly members have a copy.
Does everybody have a copy? And Ms. Sosiander, would you explain what this copy is, and so that the body knows what's before them?
The Assembly Committee on Title 21 went through this chapter just as thoroughly as we did the others, and what you see included in this chapter are changes that we made in response to P&Z comments, the issue response summary prepared by the Planning Department staff, and the discussion of the committee. The version that you have before you represents concurrence on a lot of issues from the committee and planning staff. Specifically, what this chapter does is it talks about the dimensional standards and requirements for different zones, and talks about issues such as how we measure the height of a building, what height limitations should be in various zones, talks about setbacks, talks about, for the first time, really setting up standards for some of the mixed-use districts. I would like to point out one recent change. If you recall, in Chapter 4, we had some discussion about the airport. And what we've done in the dimensional standards for the airport here is held that off because there's some productive work going on with planning staff and the airport, so we'll be filling that section in later. The committee recommends that this be adopted as presented. I have passed out a sheet with a couple of minor amendments that I'd like to discuss later. But first, be more than happy to respond to any specific questions that any Assembly members have about material in this chapter. And I don't know if Mr. Nelson wants to make any comments or not.
We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
I'll make a comment about this chapter. This is an important chapter. It frames really how the neighborhood is situated in terms of distances between houses, heights, and actually it sets up the structure. And we had a fair amount of discussion at the committee level about a concern I raised that had to do with the 5-foot side setbacks in residential areas, and also the potential for large, tall buildings to actually be up 5 feet from the property line and dominate properties next to them. And I think there was a recognition on the staff's part that there was some challenges there, that they're complex, and that it was difficult to address them at this time in this process, but that we could come back and visit them as we deal more specifically with some of the district plans and look at how to solve some of the problems that we've got, particularly in the east side of town where we have very high densities and very narrow side yards. And I complained a fair bit about the fact that some of those side yards don't see sunlight until June, and there's still piles of snow in July in those areas. So anyhow, I am a little concerned about that. And I've expressed this before. I think that Title 21 is a good document, and it's moving forward, and there's lots of sound things in it, but I still think that we have work to do in terms of our residential issues and how to make sure that we're building really quality neighborhoods. And I'm looking forward to Chapter 7, and ideally that will improve a lot, but we may have to come back and revisit parts of this. Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. I just want to echo what you just said, Madam Chair. One of the problems that we faced is if we started with a tabula rasa or a clean slate, we might do things differently. But if we do some of the things that Ms. Selcraig and others have identified as being beneficial overall, we would create huge amounts of nonconformities, or we'd have one set of standards for one part of town and a whole other set for another area that might develop later. And it's difficult to reach the goals that you're trying to reach without taking recognition of what we have before us today and the way our town is built and the way our houses are located and on and on and on. And it's very, there's a lot of tension there. And I just wanted to thank my fellow committee members because, you know, we've recognized that. We've discussed these issues where the tension is great. We've said we'll reserve it, we'll save it for later. Where there's ways of resolving it, we've tried to resolve it. And I would urge unanimous support for this document because those are the kinds of discussions that have gone on week after week after week at the Title 21 committee meeting. And so that's all I had to say, but I wanted to acknowledge what our chairman said tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Ms. Osiander.
I'd like to propose 2 amendments.
Do we don't we have to move to, do we do the amendments? Don't we have to move to approve and then do the amendment?
Already did.
Oh, okay, so thank you very much. So, yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I'd like to move Amendment 1 on the sheet that I passed out. It's on page 24, lines 34 through 42. It's in relation to existing grade. The new wording would be, in no case shall the existing grade be altered by grading such as an artificial embankment or where the ground has been built up to increase the grade around the building to obtain a higher structure than is otherwise permitted in the district. And then the language in brackets there would be deleted.
Thank you.
The issue here, in committee we talked about a situation where potentially someone has purchased a property that had been graded some years ago, and it was felt that the existing language could make that problematic to develop. But at the same time, the committee really wanted to provide protection so that developers didn't go in and regrade in order to get around height restrictions. And so we asked staff to come up with language that would reflect both concerns and give protections on both sides, and this is what they've recommended.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, do you have a comment on this?
Yes, we work with the staff in the Development Services Department where they do review the applications and issue permits. And they're very cognizant of this issue. They've been operating under the methods for determining height that are in the International Building Code, which are essentially being incorporated here in Title 21. And they have found that the development community is basically complying. They don't see any big problems with trying to get additional height through changing the grade. So in our judgment, this language, which could be a little bit provocative, isn't really necessary at this point in time. If it does become problematic in the future, we could certainly come back and revisit it at that time.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Burke, and then we'll come back to you, Ms. Osiander.
Just a question. It's a common practice in the Anchorage Bowl in areas where you have a thick peat bed or otherwise compressible materials to actually surcharge with excessive amounts of gravel to compress those materials and then build on them. We aren't going to complicate that option, are we, in this case? I mean, I think it's just a matter of a few feet, I would presume, but I don't know if there's any, like in some of these projects where you go in and you do a backfill. I mean, I'm thinking in South Anchorage, in my assembly district at C Street and O'Malley, there's a very substantial fill there that brings the grade up, I'm guessing 5 or 6 feet. And I guess I just want to make sure that we aren't complicating things unreasonably here.
I just might add in response, in the particular examples you're citing, those are areas that are zoned I-2. So the height, height's really not an issue.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Are there any objections to the amendment? The amendment's approved. That brings us back to the second amendment that Ms. Osiander has.
I am not going to pursue the second amendment. I got contradictory information, and I just had it clarified. But I am going to move Amendment 3, which is handwritten.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, this is in relation to page 11 of your document, table 21.06-2, footnote number 7. And basically, I'd like to delete the first sentence of the footnote, which currently reads, the following uses may exceed the height limit by up to 15 feet. The issue here, if this is in relation to I-1 zoned property, the document puts a height limit of 50 feet on I-1 property. We heard from some folks in the construction industry who said that there was concern about that because on occasion you might have to move in cranes or heavy equipment that would go higher than that. So we talked to planning staff about it, and there was a desire to keep a height limit for office buildings, but there was also recognition that it's important to allow our industrial areas to do their work. And so this footnote basically allows an exemption for certain kind of appurtenances that exceed the 50-foot. The first sentence, though, is a little bit contradictory and unnecessary. The second sentence says it all clearly. And so as such, I'd like to move to delete the first sentence.
Mr. Nelson, I just would like your comment on it, please.
We concur.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Are there any objections to the amendment? The amendment. is approved. Thank you. Any comments on the body of the document before us? Are there any objections to the approval of this document as amended? Hearing no objections, this chapter 6 of Title 21 is now approved. Ms. Osiander.
I would, though, like to ask, I'm not sure if it's the clerk's department or planning staff. I'm already getting people wanting copies of what the Assembly has approved on previous chapters. And I got an email today that indicated that the clerk's office does not yet have a copy of either 5 or 4 that reflects all the amendments that the Assembly passed. Now, I don't know who to look at here, planning staff or clerk, but I'd like somebody to give me some idea when the public can see a document that includes all the amendments.
We can get those out fairly shortly. What we basically do is work with the clerk's office, and then the clerk actually gets the Assembly chair to sign the ordinance after there's been a verification of all the language changes in the various chapters, and we can get them out. We normally put them on our website shortly after they're adopted, but we want to make sure that they are in fact a signed version of the.
Is it realistic to say a week, or is that too aggressive?
I'm a little. It may possibly. I know Chapter 6 is fairly straightforward. There are very few changes here. We could easily get 6 out within a week.
I think
five is the one that's really more problematic.
The way 5 was done
about
makes it
5.
very difficult, but we're working on it.
Well, I just have to tell you, there's been at least 3 groups that have asked for copies on that, and I mean, I have my Appendix D, C, E, and handwritten notes, so I know it's challenging, but I think the public is interested, and it would be important to do.
We'll try to get it out as soon as we can.
Okay, and then the last question or comment. At the previous meeting, I asked Mr. Abbott if the administration could give us some guidance on how they were dealing with situations where a particular development is in line with what we've adopted, but not necessarily in line with existing code language. And I had a brief conversation with Mr. Abbott, and it appears you're going to try to work through those on an individual basis. Is that correct, Mr. Abbott?
That is correct. We're going to try to adhere to the spirit of the revised language, but to do so in a way that hopefully will still satisfy. This is mostly coming about in the realm of code enforcement.
Indeed.
And still trying to find a way to ensure that the complainant's concerns are addressed as well.
Thank you. I know I've talked to you about one particular instance, but other Assembly members may have constituents contacting them too, so it's reassuring to know that. Thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. On Ms. Osiander's question with regard to these chapters that we have adopted, I would note, and I would ask that they be noted if they appear in public places such as a website or otherwise, that these have been provisionally adopted. They are not yet effective. We're waiting till we get through all of 21 before they become effective, and there could be further amendments. So I think it's real important to note that, because what we've said for these many months was that we're going to look at them, and when we get the whole of it done, we'll take one last look before we make it effective. And for people to think that it's finished when it's not would be a disservice. Thank you.
Point taken.
I have 2 comments as a member of the committee. One is that I think that it's more and more apparent to me as I'm on this committee that the planning staff is under an enormous pressure constantly to produce for us. And I guess I come to this body with the impression that it really wouldn't hurt if we worked to add some additional resources to that staff. And I say that because one of the reasons we're not able to address some of these issues, like the issues for residential housing, is that there's just not staff time. And I think it's going to be much more difficult to come back and do changes to Title 21 after we're through with it. I think as a body we're going to be tired of it. I think the time to do it is now, and I'm really concerned that we don't have adequate staff hours, just people, to take on some of these really important issues. The other thing is that I want to compliment our Title 21 team, because I think that we've got it down. I think that bringing forward an S version that incorporates all of our recommended amendments makes it a lot simpler for this body to get through the process. So thank you, Debbie, Ms. Osiander, for your leadership, and I know it's been a lot of work, but thank you.
It takes time to reach consensus on issues.
Yes, it does.
And when time is abbreviated, you're going to see appendixes, just so you know.
And I think we all know that Chapter 7 is going to be a lot of work, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to the next item. We're in new business, new public hearings, and it's 14A. It's AO 2008-99, an ordinance authorizing the disposal of municipal land in interest in last. Thank you. And the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? Please come down. Hearing no one, the public hearing is closed. And what's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Are there any comments, or is there any objection to approving this item? Hearing no objection, 14A is approved. That moves us on to 14B, AO 2008-101, an ordinance authorizing the long-term lease between the municipality of Anchorage.
Reading.
The public hearing on this item is now open. Is anyone in the audience that would like to speak? If so, please come down. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Are there any comments or questions from the body? Hearing no comments or questions, is there any objection to approval? Hearing no objection, this item 14B, is approved. And for some reason I lost my... Yep, here I am. I just have to move my page. Item 14C, AR 2008-183, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $169,500 from the...
Waive reading.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? The public hearing is now open. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What's the will of the body? Is there any? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there any objection to approval? Hearing no objection, this item 14C is approved. That moves us on to 14D, AR 2008-184, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $230,000 for the Girdwood service area.
Reading.
The public hearing is now open on this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing no discussion, is there any objection to approval? Hearing no objection, this item is approved. That brings us to item 14E, AR 2008-192, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage accepting and appropriating the state of Alaska's municipal match grant per. This item is now open for public hearing. Is anyone in the audience that would like to testify? If so, please come down. Hearing and seeing no one. The public testimony is closed. What's the will of the body?
Second.
Is there any objection to this item? Hearing no objection, 14E is approved. Item 14F, AR 2008-193, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage accepting and appropriating an Alaska Drinking Water Fund loan offered in the amount of $668,400 for financing a portion of the cost of the Nornuit Drive water project. This item is now open for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify? If so, please come down. Hearing and seeing no one, The public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? Is there any objection to the approval? Hearing no objection, this item 14F is approved. 14G, AR 2008-194, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, accepting and appropriating 2 state Alaska Clean Water Fund loan offering in the aggregate amounts of $1,280,000 for financing a portion. Thank you. As the public hearing is now open on this item, is there anyone who would like to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? Is there any objection to the approval of 14G? Hearing no objection, this item is approved. We're going to get done early tonight, folks. Item 14H, AR 2008-195, a resolution appropriating $214,552.
Waive reading.
This item is now open for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify? Please come down. Mr. Whitaker, would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Jed Whitaker. I just want to ask a question. What's the money for?
Do we have a representative from the administration that can answer that question? This is 14H. How will this money be spent? Can you examine that?
It's on the second page.
Do you want?
Sorry, Madam
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you
No,
want?
no, we're fine. Madam Chairman, this is the continuation of the Signal Torah, the streetlight and traffic signal transfer of responsibilities agreement that we work with the Department of Transportation. This is money that DOT will give us to expend on this project.
Okay, thank you. Did you have Mr. Whitaker, did you have any other comments?
Is this going to help coordinate the traffic signals between the city and the state roads?
Madam Chairman, that's one of the functions that this will be used for. The source of these funds is federal funds known as CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Prevention. It's a federal fund allocation that's approved by the AMATS group. One of the functions of that is the signal timing program.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Ms. Osander, did you have another comment?
The other thing on this, initially I think we were frustrated because we felt that we weren't getting our fair share of the amount of money on the Torah because we're maintaining the street lights for the state roads too. And so I'm pleased that that comment hasn't come up the last 2 times we've seen this, so apparently we're negotiating more successfully.
That's our expectation. We've gained the support of the central region here in DOT. We're now hoping for similar support in headquarters in Juneau.
Okay, before we move into too much more comment, is there anyone else who would like to speak? The public hearing is now closed on 14H. Are there any further comments about this item, Ms. Osander, that you wanted to follow up on? What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there any objections to approving 14H? Hearing no objections, that item is approved. We're now moving on to 14I, AR 2006-196, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $150,000 of the Department of Military.
Reading.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open on 14I. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What's the wish of the body? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment on this item? Is there any objection to its approval? Hearing no objection, item 14I is now approved. That moves us on to special orders, and I believe Ms. Drummond had an item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hereby give notice of intent to move for rescission of Assembly action taken on May 20th, 2008, approving Assembly Memorandum AM 272-2008A, Players House of Rock, number 2097, restaurant designation permit allowing access of persons under 21 years of age to designated premises for purposes of dining and persons under the age of 19 for employment as provided in AS 04.16.010 and 13 AAC 104.715-.795. I give this notice of intent as provided in the Rules of Procedure for the Assembly, AMC 2.30.080.h, that the motion to rescind the Assembly's May 20th, 2008 action on AM 272-2008 is to be considered at the Assembly's next meeting scheduled for October 14th, 2008. I have copies for the clerk and anyone else who wishes them.
And the clerk has recorded this item, and I assume, therefore, it'll be on that agenda. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And the business will
Madam Clerk? Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Coffey.
I'm just curious. We've not, in my experience, done a motion to rescind in my 4 or 5 years on the body. And so my question is, first, do we give notice to the person or that business we're trying to do? I'm assuming we've done that.
Could you speak into your mic, Mr. Coffey?
I thought I was. It was on. Have we given notice to the business?
I haven't. I've just received it today.
I'm sorry?
I just received it this evening. We will notify the business, certainly.
Okay. And secondly, is there how does this play into the existing liquor licensing provisions in, I believe it's in Title II or perhaps Title 10, dealing with how we take action on licenses? And I suppose that could be directed to the Department of Law, just so we don't get crossways. I recall a month ago when this matter came up, I did speak with the police about getting some reports so that we could find out if they were going to, if there was the factual basis, so we avoid anecdotal actions based on something that, complaints or this or that. And so I just want to make sure we're not running afoul of that as well.
Madam Clerk, do you have a comment?
Since I just saw it this evening, I will review the code, make sure our Assembly Counsel prepared this. I believe she probably has an answer for him.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Ms. Tucker, do you have a comment?
I have no comment.
Okay. Thank you. So, Ms. Drummond's comments are recorded.
Thank you.
That moves us on to audience participation. Is there anyone here this evening who has come to speak? Hearing and seeing no one, we'll move on to Assembly comments. Is there any further comments from Assembly members?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I think we're about to set a record tonight, and so I just wanted to commend you on that. Thank you very much.
Well, it must have just been the agenda. Thanks so much. Hearing no comments, did you have a further comment? Okay, lots of moves to adjourn. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Are we eating?
Yeah, just food.